Now that I've seen all 7 films of the DCEU, I have a responsibility to rank those films worst to best. Have no fear, there will be 0 spoilers for Shazam in this ranking. How would you rank these movies worst to best? Let's talk in the comments. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my ranking of the 7 DCEU films from worst to best. I'm excited to dive into this ranking. Of course, I'm a huge DC fan. I love DC, and any excuse I could have to talk about these movies, I'm super excited to talk about these movies. So I can't wait to dive into this. Can't wait to show you where Shazam falls in my ranking and discuss that a little bit. So without further ado, let's dive in. How would you rank these? Let's talk in the comments. Number 7. Suicide Squad. I just don't like this movie. I bought it on Blu-ray because it said it had an extended cut. I've said this once, I've said this twice, I've said this probably 7 times. The extended cut makes the film worse. I thought it was bad before. The extended cut just makes it worse. There's just so many reasons for me to not like that movie. I mean, I heard the rumor that it had like 7 edits of this film, and even if that's not true, it feels like it is true. It feels like the movie was a mess. And it's where you could just kind of tell that they were getting really reactionary and trying to change things when it was really maybe a little bit too late to change things. I don't know. You could just tell like the editing was a mess. The story felt kind of messy. And really though, the saving graces of the movie, because let me end this on a positive note. Will Smith and Margot Robbie. She was amazing as Harley Quinn. So Margot Robbie really did shine in this movie. And I like Will Smith. And I thought he was a really good Deadshot. So those 2 characters shine for me in that movie. Number 6, Justice League. I put this one kind of at my second to last because it's so frustrating to look at this movie and see the potential of what it could have been. And every time I watch it, it's like I can see it's like right there, but you can feel that this movie is directed by 2 different people. That Zack Snyder took care of a huge chunk of it and had a vision, and then when he left because of tragic reasons and stuff, Joss Whedon comes in, and you could just tell they reshot a huge chunk of that. And so it's like you feel 2 competing visions. It's not even like 2 visions that worked hand in hand. You could just feel the 2 competing visions working against each other, not for each other, in this movie. And that's kind of what cheapens it for me, because you can just truly feel that. Henry Cavill's mustache doesn't really help that much either. But the huge positive about Justice League is the cast. I really thought the cast themselves were great in their roles. Yeah, Batman went a little too bright since BVS, where he was a little bit darker, but nonetheless, I liked Batfleck. I thought Ben Affleck was good in that role as a whole, and I just feel like that whole cast together was a cast that worked. So that's the most positive aspect of Justice League for me. Oh, the bad guy. You could just tell he was supposed to be more. Steppenwolf was supposed to be more than what he was, and he just came out looking like he was not fully rendered. You know what I mean? He just looked like an unfinished villain, not fleshed out, and the CGI not fleshed out, just on every level, from the surface level down deep. It felt like this character just wasn't so fleshed out, which is just really sad, because you could see kind of the vision and what a huge lead in this was to be into more, and it's sad to see that potential miss. Number 5, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. I do have a lot of problems with this movie, but there's still a lot of things I like about this movie. I said it about Justice League, so I'm going to say it here. Ben Affleck as Batman worked for me. Did not like that this Batman killed. Like, that was not my favorite aspect of this Batman, but the overall grit and tone that Ben Affleck brought to that character, that was amazing. That warehouse fight is amazing. It's just cool to get to see Batman move. I mean, we have all these other movies where Batman can barely turn his head, and here he is running around, picking up people, slamming them down to the ground. He's a brutal Batman, and I really liked it. So for me, Ben Affleck was a huge, strong positive of this movie. This is where I felt Superman was a little bit too gloomy, and actually this is where it would have helped to have a Man of Steel 2 before Batman vs. Superman, because it is an interesting plot. That Lex Luthor is framing Superman, but it's getting into Superman's head, and he's starting to doubt himself. Am I causing these problems? The world seems to hate me. But if we got a movie in between where he really began to love his job and love being Superman, and we saw that joy, and then we dive into this and watch an enemy try to rob that joy from him, I think it would have been a bit more compelling. But then the things that kind of take this movie down for me, the rushed plot line with Doomsday, actually for me that's one of the biggest problems. The Doomsday storyline is so fantastic. You watch the Death of Superman and Reign of the Superman animated movies that just recently came out, you can really see the epic nature of the Death of Superman storyline, and it's just really sad that they completely rushed through that. And so you kind of feel that with that movie. To me, when I watch BVS, I see a lot of great things. I see a lot of well done concepts. I see, you know, a good kind of direction, but at the same time I see kind of a poor level of execution in that it just feels like it's rushed. You can kind of feel like, well, Marvel's got all these combined heroes and we want to take a different path, so we're going to go ahead and kind of maybe shove some things together. It was cool that it was kind of a DC Trinity movie throwing Wonder Woman in there, but it just had a kind of rushed feeling to me. Mixed with fantastic stuff, it had that kind of rushed nature to it. Number 4, Shazam! This one, it's weird that I'm putting it at number 4, and I want to keep putting it higher, but the weird thing about Shazam for me, like, taking Shazam and comparing it to the rest of the movies in the DCEU feels like taking apples and oranges and trying to compare those two. Shazam has such a different tone and feel to it. I struggled with where do I put this in the DCEU. So this one was really kind of hard for me to figure out where am I going to rank it. And I'll get more to why I put it here at number 4 when I dive into my, you know, top 3 and stuff, but I really do like Shazam. So don't look at it and say, well, Durbin put it at number 4. You must think it's a totally average movie. No, I gave the movie an A- in my review. I really enjoy this movie. It is definitely worth seeing. I mean, the cast, the actors, the young actors, the older actors, all of them, they all had just such a great chemistry and all of it worked together so well. Zachary Levi was fantastic in the role of Shazam. It was just overall a really good, solid, fun movie. And you can really feel like you could just shut your brain off and have a ton of fun with it. Or you could turn your brain on and engage a bit more and have a ton of fun with it. It was just a really fun superhero movie, and it was a refreshing way to dive into an origin story because it's from the perspective of the target audience of the comic books. 14, 15-year-old kid getting the superpowers that, you know, we all sit around at lunch when we were teenagers and talked about. Man, do you want to be invisible? Do you want to fly? Heat vision? Super strength? What power would you want to have? So it's a really cool perspective, and because it takes it from that perspective, it gives the movie this kind of, this tone of joy that just, it's so refreshing to see that in this movie. And it does have a good lore to it. So as it introduces us to this world, it does have a pretty interesting lore. So it has a lot of stuff that I really like. But diving into my number 3, Aquaman. This one comes in at number 3 because it still sticks with like kind of the tone and feel of the DCEU while building that bridge to that lighter tone, and I really love the mythology in this one. Yeah, you could argue this one follows a lot of stuff from Black Panther, in which case then I'll argue, well, Quicksilver and the Flash have a lot in common, and Hawkeye and Green Arrow have a lot in common. It's just a comic book thing. It just seems like that's just the two worlds. Who cares? I think Aquaman is a great movie. I love the underwater technological city of Atlantis. I love seeing Jason Momoa in that role, and he brought something really cool to that role.
Permission to come aboard.
I mean, I love the fact that they took King Arthur lore, and since his name is Arthur Curry, they made him a King Arthur. I mean, even from the sword in the stone moment, there that is in the movie where it's the trident, and he's the only one who is worthy to get it. And that was getting the original costume and taking the trident, it was that sword in the stone moment. And so, whereas Shazam definitely had some epic lore, it's more fun and, you know, jovial. This, I really liked kind of the epic nature of this lore, and so that kind of sucked me in just a little bit more, but it's a different level than Shazam. Again, this is why Shazam was hard for me to rank, because Shazam's on a different level, and I mean that in a totally positive way. It's just weird to try to put these movies together, but if I had to pick, there's still something about Aquaman that I did enjoy a little bit more. I love King Arthur lore. I love how they played with the King Arthur lore in this movie. Even though some of the CGI, some of the graphics, it really looks like they're in front of a green screen, and maybe they could have polished the graphics just a little bit more. I have nothing wrong whatsoever with the story and the cast and the acting, so I thought overall it was really good. Number 2, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman and Man of Steel are both fantastic movies to me, and I had Man of Steel here at number 2 and Wonder Woman at number 1, but here's what kind of changed things up. Rewatch Man of Steel for a video I did with Adam Daly over on his channel, kind of defending Man of Steel, and it reminded me just how much I really like that movie. And I love the character of Superman. So that's kind of why in this ranking they've switched places. But Wonder Woman is just a fantastic movie. It has so many great emotional beats, such a great storyline. I love Gal Gadot in that role. I think she does a good job embodying that character and making her a strong, fierce warrior. And so I enjoyed that aspect of it. A lot of people talk about her being in World War I and how it's like, yeah, it's got this Captain America kind of feel to it. Kind of does, but that also just doesn't bother me too much because I just felt like even though it may have had that kind of feel, they did a good job with that feel. Her taking no man's land, for instance, is something that definitely did not exist in Captain America, and the way they did the whole emotion of that scene, the slow motion, her stepping up and doing what nobody was able to do and doing what nobody thought could be done and taking no man's land. Like, scenes like that are fantastic. That hope that is constantly in her, where before no man's land, what builds up to that, where she sees all these injured people, these hurting people, these people trying to escape, and she is desperate to help. So many things that they did with the character that I just thought was absolutely fantastic, and it keeps Wonder Woman this high. No matter like how many good movies they could probably have coming down, there's something about the heart of this movie, Wonder Woman, that just keeps it right here. Number 1, Man of Steel. I love Superman. I think Superman is a fantastic character. So to defend this movie just a little bit and why it's in my number 1, I just love what they did with Superman in a modern day. He hasn't stepped out into the light because he's afraid to, because the world fears what is different. Kal-El is from a whole nother planet. He's got godlike powers. He is as different can be. So of course he's afraid. What is the world going to think of him when he steps into the light? How is just him stepping into the light going to change the world? And then a lot of people don't like all the damage and destruction in the fights. Well, I mean, it's a bunch of gods battling it out on a world that is basically cardboard to them. Of course there's going to be that destruction. And I think everybody keeps citing Superman 2, where Superman cares about the people, and so he tries to fly away and get, Zod and the other two to follow him out so that there's no more fighting or destruction in the city. But I'm looking at this movie, and it's like, Superman is a farmer, and he's going up against military-trained Kryptonians.
Where did you train? On a farm?
So no matter what, there's gonna be destruction. And their motives are a bit different in this than in Superman 2. It makes sense. They try to conquer the world in Superman 2. Once they've done that, they wanted a challenge. That's not what they want in Man of Steel. In Man of Steel, they want to wreck the world and make the world a foundation to rebuild their own world.
My soul. That is what you have taken from me.
So Zod wanted vengeance against Superman and to steal his soul. So even if Superman tried to fly away from Metropolis to draw Zod out, Zod would not follow. Zod's purpose isn't just to kill Superman. Zod's purpose now is to kill his soul and to take away his reason for living and to kill what he loves. And remember, Superman was over in the Indian Ocean when most of that death and destruction rained down. Most of that death and destruction was not the fight between Superman and Zod. It was the world engine. Anyway, I could keep on defending it. I love Man of Steel, but I'm biased. I love the character of Superman. There are plot holes in that movie. It's got its problems, and I'm not blind to that. But I enjoy that movie for what it is, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic film. So there it is, my ranking, worst to best, the current DCEU, Man of Steel 2 Shazam. So what did you think of the DCEU? How would you rank these 7 movies worst to best? Let's talk about that in the comments. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next ranking video, theological analysis, movie review, trailer reaction, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.